Welcome once again to Daily Life Connection. Thanks for joining us again today. As we continue to explore the heart of God revealed in 2 Samuel chapter 9, the story of Mephibosheth. We talked yesterday about the fact that Mephibosheth was lame or crippled in both feet. His feet had been broken and his ankles, and they had not been set properly, and so they were deformed, and he was not able to walk normally. Today I want to talk about that lameness from this aspect. As we look at this whole story, it reminds us that our lameness isn't the end of our story. Mephibosheth being dropped and broken and healing improperly and living in pain and limitation isn't the end of his story. It doesn't determine his future. It doesn't limit him in the way that it could have because of King David. And your lameness, your brokenness, my brokenness, the things that in our lives that keep us from functioning and living life to the full, because of Jesus, are not the final word. They are not what will determine how we live. For all those years that Mephibosheth was living in Lodabar, his lameness determined how he lived. He wasn't able to play with the other kids. He wasn't able to work and make a living. He wasn't able to hike the hills and enjoy the beauty of creation. He wasn't able to walk up the hill and look at the stars at night, lay on a field and look at the stars. He was limited by his lameness. But at the end of the story, he is not limited whatsoever. Interesting that when David says to Ziba, the servant, is there anyone left? He says, yes, there's Mephibosheth. He's lame in both feet. His weakness had become his label. They were labeling him. Oh, he's the crippled one. He's the lame one. You know Mephibosheth, the guy that can't walk right, the guy that's broken. I want to say this today. Don't accept the labels that you or others put on you as defining who you really are. Mephibosheth's lameness at the end of the story was not a factor in who he was whatsoever. When people came into David's palace and saw them at the banquet table, they saw David, his sons and daughters, wife, and Mephibosheth, just one of the royal family. His lame feet were under the table, covered by the graciousness of David. And therefore, his lameness did not determine who he was. The label. Don't let people label you. Now, it's not about fighting them and saying, don't call me that. It's about not accepting it down inside. When people label us and go, oh, he's the angry one, or he's the lazy one, or what, don't accept that as defining who you are. Oftentimes when people call us by labels, it's he's the dumb one, or she's the ugly one, whatever. It hurts because we know there's some truth to it. It was true. Mephibosheth was lame. But don't let that label define you. That's the heart of God. The heart of God is to say, I don't want your labels to define you. Don't accept what people call you. Don't accept what you call yourself. Don't accept what the enemy calls you. He's the accuser. So often when we mess up, the enemy will come along and say, oh, see, I knew it. I knew you always were a whatever. And you're a failure. Yeah, I see you failed again. You're a failure. Don't accept those labels. Don't believe that they will determine your future. They may, if it isn't for Jesus. You see, his lameness would have determined his future if it wasn't for King David. What has happened to us, the labels that we place on ourselves and others place on us, can limit us, except the fact there is a David, there is a Jesus. For every label in your life, there is a King David. Oh, that's so good. For every label about what's wrong with your life, there is a Jesus. That's good news today. Let's think about that. Rejoice in it and accept it and choose to trust it's true. and we'll talk again tomorrow. God bless.